All right, so the new TOTE system. Last spring, we rolled out a new TOTE system on a new platform, and this slide will highlight some of the benefits of the new TOTE system and some of the things that we're still working to do in the new TOTE system. So the new TOTE system was deployed. Obviously, the TOTE system is where school programs, calendars, and transportation request forms should be submitted. Calendars are entered into eSchool Plus will be pulled into TOTE for any schools missing calendars in TOTE. That right there is a note that we provide to our LEAs, but I wanted to include it here because one of the things we're going to look to do in the future is to reduce the redundancy of non-public schools entering their calendars as well. So what we're going to be doing is working with our internal teams here to identify where calendar information from non-public schools are entered and see if that information can also be pulled into TOTE.
But at the current time, it's not a standard process.
That's correct. Calendars from non-public schools are entered directly into TOTE.
And those are different calendars than are in eSchool Plus or SETS.
Correct, but we'll be looking internally to see what those systems are capturing and what we can pull so that we're asking for less in TOTE. All right, transportation request form submissions are made easier. Easy access to transportation rosters. And I do want to highlight that. So as non-public schools, your representatives for transportation should have access to a roster of all of the students that attend your non-public school so that you can see their routing details or their transportation details, their pickup time, their drop-off time, their pickup address, their drop-off address, etc. Ability to view student concerns, that's coming down, that's on its way. And then real-time data reporting. We all want to make sure that everything is up to date on a daily basis when it comes to all the information that we're going to be presenting and providing. So what is the role of non-public schools? The main role in TOTE is to enter school calendar information prior to the certification submission deadlines. So again, for students that are returning to the LEA, we ask that the LEA submit those TRFs or transportation request forms by the first Monday in June for the following fall school year.
Including for those students attending non-public schools.
Including, correct. So we're thinking at the LEA level of the students enrolled in the particular LEA. So yes, this is for all of their students, including those attending non-public schools. And so one of the things that we want to make sure non-public schools are aware of is that LEAs cannot submit a transportation request form unless the calendar for the attending school has been entered into TOTE. So I just want to reiterate that. LEAs cannot enter transportation request forms for their students if the calendar for those students attending school is not in TOTE. So as a non-public school, if you have not entered your calendar, then no LEA is able to enter a TRF for any student that will be attending that non-public school.
So what that might look like is at the end of the school year when everybody scrambles, that if an LEA doesn't get a chance to enter that calendar in, students who are going to be going to the non-public school for ESY may not have transportation. So what can a non-public do to find out about whether the calendars have been entered and TRFs are?
So non-public schools have the access and ability to enter their own calendar. So non-public schools need to make sure that someone within their non-public school has access to TOTE and has attended training so that they have the ability to enter the calendar for their non-public school. That will allow any LEA who has students attending that non-public school to enter a TRF for them. Good question. All right. And so also with that being said, we also want calendars kept up to date throughout the school year. And one of the things that we ask there is when there are exception days. And from a transportation perspective, we're talking about days that students are not expected to be in school. We need to know on an exception basis. If it's a parent-teacher conference day and we don't need to pick up students and bring them to school, that should be entered into the TOTE system as an exception day, so that we know not to schedule service for those days. Also, the calendar does provide us with the basic information instruction start time, what time the doors to the school opens, PM dismissal time, if there are any reoccurring half days, things like that, so we know what time to schedule service for drop-off and for pickup.
And also, if the particular school in the jurisdiction follows like a county.
Correct. So if during the winter time and there's inclement weather, entering that calendar, you also indicate if you follow the particular county jurisdiction when it comes to being closed on 2-hour delay, or if you're operational during inclement weather. So if you are a non-public school in Montgomery County, when you are filling out that calendar, you will indicate whether you follow Montgomery County decision for inclement weather operation, or if you make your own decision. Also, we ask that you identify different programs for students that are eligible for transportation. Let's say, for instance, you have a non-public school and you have 10 students who will be attending that will be needing transportation services. However, 2 of them have to stay an extra 40 minutes to receive some faith-related service. Then those 2 students would have a different program that ends at a different time, and they would have a separate calendar entered into the TOTE system. What this will do is this will prevent us from sending 1 bus there to pick up the original 8 students that have been dismissed at 2:30, and that bus not have to wait until 3:15 or 3:30 for the other 2 students. We can schedule a subsequent pickup for the other 2 students. And that also works the same in the morning if they start at different times as well. We ask that non-public schools review transportation rosters at the start of the school year prior to the school year beginning, to make sure that, as far as you know, you've seen transportation details for all of the students that you are expecting to be attending come the first day of school. And one of the things we're going to also talk about a little later on, just to share with you guys, are the reimbursement options that we have when LEAs are not able to submit transportation request forms timely. We have complete necessary follow-up with student LEAs. Obviously, if you don't see those transportation details, the responsibility of submitting the TRF is on the LEA. So if you're fully expecting to see a TRF for Jason Campbell and there's not one in there, reach out to Jason Campbell's LEA and find out what's going on. And then again, partnering with LEAs to ensure we have up-to-date and accurate student data. So the last thing we want to do is get information that's not accurate when we go to pick up a student and we're at the wrong address, knocking on a door at 6:30 in the morning. Okay, so some ways that you can support the LEAs to ensure, smoother transition to transportation. Definitely work with parents and guardians and LEAs to update student information. So one of the things that we ask, or we would encourage non-public schools to do, is to contact families ahead of time to assist with the process. So understanding when our deadlines are, we know that we will be requiring transportation request forms the first Monday in June for the following fall school year. So maybe at the end of the school year, or maybe a little bit before the end of the school year, contact families and assist and help out. Make sure you can obtain accurate information when it comes to pickup and drop-off addresses. Share that information with the LEA. Definitely review the transportation process for newly enrolled students. And then confirm the routing details for returning students and newly enrolled students prior to the first day of school. The more information that we can make sure is accurate, the more transportation request forms that we can receive prior to the start of the school year will ensure a better start to your school year. And all of these things are typical throughout the school year, and I know I'm talking specifically about the start of the school year, but that is typically when we see the most issues, but these things do hold true throughout the school year. Provide parents with reimbursement information for newly enrolled students without the TRF submission. So again, we're still going to be talking about that in a couple slides to come, but what we do is we have an LEA reimbursement program for LEAs who are unable to gain access to eligible students that are new to their LEA. So students that have changed LEAs will be attending a new school, and the LEA has not had a chance to submit a transportation request form. We have a reimbursement process that they can partake in to provide the service, while we will reimburse them until they gain access and are able to submit a transportation request form. All right, so again, partner with LEAs, ensure student information is accurate and updated, ensure TRFs are submitted before the deadlines, ensure TRFs are submitted at least 2 weeks prior to the start of school for your newly enrolled students, understand and help communicate expectations when it comes to school placement and ride time. Okay? So now, some of our parent communication that we've been doing and that we have done newly this year. We rolled some of this stuff out to help communicate with parents so that they are understanding of what our process is and where responsibility lies, so that when there is a potential gap in service being provided, we can identify where the breakdown was and quickly follow up to rectify that for the family and for the students. So one of the things that we've done this school year and in previous school years is provide parent letters. What these parent letters do what they do is they inform the parents of the transportation details of the students as they will be once the school year starts. Now, that's something we have been doing for approximately 4 or 5 years already. But I do want to just take a quick step. I'm a little bit ahead of myself, and I'm talking about the postcard letters. That's to come. The DOT parent letters, I'm sorry, that's specific to a new initiative that we did just this past school year, where we realized we had been doing communication to parents that we have received TRFs for, but we had not been doing any specific communication to parents that we did not receive a TRF for. So what we've done now is we've created a DOT parent letter to inform parents and guardians of eligible students who OSSE has not received a TRF for. So that means we're telling parents shortly after our deadlines that we have not received a TRF. Please follow up with the LEA in school in order to have the TRF submitted. We understand that the LEA is responsible for submitting the TRF, but we basically want to get them reaching out to the LEA, to the school, to let them know, hey, we received this letter, they don't have what they need, can someone please assist? And so what this does is we're now reaching out and informing parents so that once the start of school year hits, if they do not have transportation, we have informed them the reason why and steps that they could take. Now this information is also provided to LEAs on a continuing basis as well. So they are aware of who they have not submitted a TRF for based on the information that we have, which comes from the eligibility system of record and SEDS. So that's one new piece of communication that we've done this year. We've also provided a DOT parent checklist that was made available online. What it did was provide parents with key dates to be aware of in preparation for the school year. Hey, if you reach this date over the summer and you haven't heard anything, hey, raise your hand and give us a call. It gives an understanding of the appropriate action steps by each person and by each team. And so what I was mentioning before was the DOT postcard letter. This is information that we send out to parents no less than 1 week prior to the start of the school year, where it basically informs them what the transportation details will be. So Hi, Mom and Dad. We received this for Jason. We will be picking up Jason at this address at this time. We'll be taking him to this school. We'll be bringing him home from this school, and you can expect him to arrive at this time. And it provides also support information to our Parent Resource Center if they ever have any questions or concerns. And so parent and LEA reimbursement. So this is the last section that we have. And to this section, I want to say this is more for support to our LEAs, but we do want to make sure that non-public schools are aware. I've actually had a recent non-public school reach out along with a parent because due to the location of the school, the child was on the bus for a long period of time, but the parent was asking if they can provide transportation and just be reimbursed. So we want to make sure that all of our school partners, non-public schools included, are aware of these so that they can share with parents when they feel necessary or when asked. So we do provide parent reimbursement. Typically our conditions are when there's a failure on our end, and that's for both LEA and parent reimbursement. But when a parent is requesting this service, we will review and likely honor their request.
Jason, is there a similar process for non-public schools in the event, like let's say, a TRF was not submitted by the LEA, and there's a delay in getting that and processing it. If the non-public were to make, some arrangements to transport the student in the interim 2, 3, 4 days, is there a similar process for the non-public to get reimbursed in that situation?
I don't think we currently have one. I do know that I'm aware that it had been discussed that if the non-public school were to provide, then the LEA can reimburse them.
Yeah,
and
so
then
from the LEA perspective, not from OSSE.
Right, and then we can reimburse the LEA.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if
but the direct relationship would be with the non-public first seeking reimbursement from the LEA.
Correct.
And then the LEA
seeking reimbursement from OSSE.
So there at least is some means for the non-public to try and kind of move that process along with the expectation that the LEA would be the first reimburser.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And again, I just haven't been familiar with that direct from OSSE to the non-public school.
Yeah, I'm not either, but I know
right.
I know it's come from the non-public school with the LEA reimbursing.
Right, right. And so these parent reimbursement forms as well as LEA reimbursement forms are both available on the website. Parent reimbursement typically when there's an OSSE failure or when the parent is requesting reimbursement. And then LEA reimbursement, typically this was designed to support the start of the school year. And there were there was a list of criteria that was actually developed in order for us to approve an LEA reimbursement. So one, the TRF must be submitted, and what that does to us is that states that the LEA does have access to that student, and so there's an end date, meaning this period of reimbursement isn't going to be endless. It will only be for students new to the LEA, and the reason behind that, is linked to the difference in the deadline of TRF submissions for students returning to the LEA and new students to the LEA. And the reason for that difference is this. Students that are returning to the LEA, that LEA has had access to that student the entire time. So from the whole entire fall school year throughout the summer leading up to the new fall school year, they've had access to that student. So our stance is, or the idea is that they've had nothing hindering them from entering a transportation request for those students that are not new to their LEA. For students that are new to their LEA, there are some things that have to take place in order for them to gain access in the appropriate systems for them to submit a TRF for that new student. And I do know that there is an exiting process that a student has to go through from their old LEA in order for the new LEA to gain access to them. And depending on when their systems flip, the old LEA as well as the new LEA, depending on when their systems flip from the old school year to the new school year, that might impact when the new LEA gains access to them. So that's the reason why there's a delayed deadline for students that are new to the LEA, because we understand access to that student might not have been gained until mid-July, so to speak, and we've already completed a large number of our routing activities. We do understand that's a smaller population, but we do want to make sure that we have supports in place for all of the students in all scenarios, so we developed the LEA reimbursement process. For new students to the LEA where access is not granted in time for a TR submission deadline. Okay? And so lastly, there's just a certification and submitting slide here that just goes through some of the stuff that will be needed. Both the reimbursement guidelines are available on our OSSE Transportation website and can be viewed and used, printed and downloaded. Okay.
Great.
So I just want to check for some questions.
Yeah. Yeah, please. Okay, a question about ride time. So, what should a non-public school do in the event that they are concerned about the ride time, the length of time a student is on the bus, for one of their students attending a non-public school?
Okay, that's an excellent question. So, I'm going to answer it in two parts. Well, one is actually what whomever the transportation POC is at that non-public school. I would encourage them to contact our resource center. Now, we do transport, 3,500 students, and we do support families and parents, and so we do have the phone ringing a lot. However, our resource center has a prompt when you call in that if you are a school official, you get into a different queue to log your concern. So, one, I would encourage the non-public school representative who is responsible for transportation or monitoring transportation to contact our Parent Resource Center.
And you're talking about, at the end of the presentation, the OSSE DOT Resource Center?
Correct. I think we have a section at the end where we'll have the resources and information, contact information. So that'll be there. And secondly, again, as I had said before, is to understand that we do transport a lot of students to schools outside of the district. And so we want to make sure that all of our partners understand how we route and what ride time means to us. So for students who are within the district and will be attending school within the district, they have a ride time of 75 minutes. That actually goes up to 6 miles outside of the district. So it really encompasses the district and 6 miles outside of the district. We have a ride time of 75 minutes. What that means is we will route our students up to but not exceeding 75 minutes. So they can feasibly be scheduled for 70, 71 minutes. However, if you notice that student, or you get word that student has been riding for 90 minutes on a regular basis, contact us. If the student is within the district and attends a school that is between 6 to 15 miles outside of the district, there's a ride time of 90 minutes. So we will route students up to but not exceeding 90 minutes.
Up to, but it could be shorter than that.
It could be shorter, correct. But that is our internal goal, is to route them and have them on the bus for no longer than 90 minutes. And then more than 15 miles is 120 minutes. So if you're more than 15 miles outside of the city, then we will route up to but not exceed the ride time for students at 120 minutes.
So it's not as simple as like I Google my address, I Google where the school goes and says, okay, this is 15 miles, and it looks like even during rush hour this can take me, if I was driving directly in my car, 25 minutes, half hour. How can it take 3 times that much?
So we're operating a school bus, which we have to follow different laws when it comes to speed limits and being on different highways. Also, operating a school bus within the district where streets are very narrow, population is growing, traffic is at its, the worst it's been in however many years it's been existing. We have to understand that there are obstacles. And again, as I stated before, even though we wish we could, we cannot have one bus for every student.
Sure.
So we just want to make sure that we are partnering with LEAs and non-public schools to make sure those messages are going out to the families of the students that we support.
So the Parent Resource Center would be one means to be able to address those concerns. What about with the LEA or the parent or the IEP team?
Well, definitely what we want to do is when those instances come up, we want to have a position at the IPT meeting. So if as our non-public school partners, if we're aware of something like that coming down, definitely notify us. We have some specialists on our team who can participate in those IPT meetings to make sure all of this information is clear. And we know that in transportation, we can definitely do a better job in being a presence at some of those IPT meetings.
Okay, great. Let's just check and see if there's any other questions, and then we'll move on. All right, so it looks like there are no other transportation questions, so thank you, Mr. Campbell. If any other questions come up, we'll be sure to follow up with you later on. We'll be preparing an FAQ with, questions that we're going to be answering from here. So thanks, have a great day. All right, so now let's move on to the last section, and we will be covering here physical restraint and seclusion 10-day IEP follow-up meeting requirements. Let's see. Okay, so in this section,